On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched a massive joint military operation directly into the heart of Iran. Within hours, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was dead. His compound in Tehran was completely destroyed. But this war didn't start in 2026. The tensions behind it go back almost a decade. And what's happening right now is going to affect your life, whether you live in the Middle East or not. Let me explain. To understand this war, we need to go back to 2015. That year, the US and 5 other world powers signed a deal with Iran called the JCPOA. Basically, Iran agreed to limit its nuclear program, and in return, the world would ease economic sanctions. Some people thought the deal was working fine. Iran was holding up its end, but others, including Trump, said the deal didn't go far enough. It didn't do anything about Iran's missiles, and it didn't stop Iran from funding armed groups like Hezbollah and Hamas across the region. In 2018, President Trump pulled the US out of the deal. Without it in place, Iran started enriching uranium far beyond the previous limits. By 2025, the IAEA reported that Iran had enough enriched uranium for 9 nuclear warheads. Iran maintained its nuclear program was purely for peaceful purposes. And then, in January 2020, the conflict escalated sharply. The US ordered the killing of Qasem Soleimani, the second most powerful man in Iran and head of the Quds Force, Iran's elite military unit. The US viewed him as responsible for the deaths of hundreds of American soldiers through proxy forces. He was killed by a US drone strike in Baghdad, Iraq. Iran vowed retaliation, and tensions reached their highest point in decades. Fast forward to June 13th, 2025. Israel launches a major military operation against Iran. More than 200 Israeli fighter jets hit over 100 targets. Nuclear facilities, military bases, key commanders. Mossad operatives sabotaged Iran's air defense systems from the inside. Israel said the strikes were necessary to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. On June 22nd, the United States joined in, using bunker buster bombs to hit Iran's most fortified nuclear sites. Iran fought back, launching hundreds of ballistic missiles at Israeli cities. Missiles struck buildings in Tel Aviv, Haifa, and other areas. Israel's defense systems intercepted most of the incoming missiles, but not all. After 12 days of intense fighting, a ceasefire was brokered on June 24th. Iran's military and nuclear capabilities were severely weakened, but there were civilian casualties on both sides, and none of the core issues were resolved. After the 12-day war, Iran's economy deteriorated rapidly. By December 2025, $1 was worth over 1.4 million rials. Food prices rose 72%. On December 28th, shopkeepers in Tehran's Grand Bazaar shut their doors. Within days, demonstrations spread across more than 100 cities. What started as economic grievances grew into broader demands for regime change. On January 8th, the Iranian government launched a massive crackdown. Thousands of protesters were killed, and the internet was shut off across the entire country. It was the bloodiest uprising since the 1979 revolution. During this period, the US was building up its largest military presence in the Middle East since 2003, and they weren't alone. Backed by intelligence from key European allies and quietly supported by Gulf Arab states who feared Iranian influence, the coalition moved aircraft carriers and fighter jets into position. In February, indirect nuclear negotiations in Oman broke down. On February 24th, Trump gave a speech accusing Iran of pursuing nuclear weapons. 4 days later, the US and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury and Operation Roaring Lion, joint airstrikes hitting major Iranian cities. Khamenei's compound was destroyed, and the supreme leader was killed. Trump stated the goal was effectively regime change. Iran responded within hours with Operation True Promise 4, firing hundreds of missiles and drones at Israel and US military bases across the Middle East. And here's where this war hit the entire world. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway that carries 20% of the world's oil. They didn't need warships, just drone strikes on a few oil tankers. Insurance companies pulled out and traffic dropped to almost zero. Iran later announced it would only allow Chinese ships to pass. Why just China? Because this had officially become a global proxy conflict. While the US and its Western alliance backed Israel, Iran had spent years deepening its military and economic ties with Russia and China. Russia, reliant on Iranian weapons for its own wars, and China, Iran's biggest oil buyer, both immediately condemned the US strikes, warning the UN that the region was on the brink of total collapse. Here's what makes this war unusual. Domestic support in the US is incredibly low. Only 21% of Americans favored attacking Iran, compared to the 90% who supported Afghanistan after 9/11. To rally support, the conflict quickly took on a religious and ideological tone on both sides. In Iran, state media framed the war as a holy struggle by the axis of resistance against Western imperialism. Meanwhile, in the US, political and military leaders began using highly religious rhetoric. The White House released footage of evangelical pastors praying over the president for victory. Some U.S. commanders reportedly told soldiers the war was part of a divine plan, and defense officials publicly described Iran as being driven by prophetic delusions. It was no longer just about nuclear weapons. Both sides were pitching it as a battle for the soul of the region. Now, the big question everyone is asking: will there be ground troops? A majority of Americans, 58%, oppose sending U.S. soldiers into Iran. The Pentagon has insisted the operation is air only, but analysts point out that regime change, which is the stated goal, has never been achieved through airstrikes alone. Iran is a massive, mountainous country of 90 million people with a deeply embedded security structure. Whether this stays an air campaign or escalates further is one of the biggest unknowns of this conflict. But if American troops hit the ground in Iran and nuclear-armed superpowers like Russia and China are forced to respond, it won't just change the Middle East. It will reshape the entire world order for generations.